good morning, good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, good morning. Wonderful to see you all as you're all dialing in from, no doubt, loads of different locations on this really, really sunny day here in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us. And as you're all coming in through the waiting room, a big warm welcome to you. So for those of you that haven't met me before, my name's Amanda Rosewarne, and I am one of the co-founders and chair of the CPD Standards Office. And every month we have a special session dedicated to our community. And that is full of coaches, trainers, online speakers, educators, everything about learning in the education ecosystem. And so today's session, we're really excited to have because it's all about performance. And one of the things we've got to do within our community and within our profession is always make sure that we perform in the best way, not only to give the best to our clients, but also to give the best to ourselves and our businesses as well. So this is a CPD session for you. And we would like to make sure that you concentrate on it and you get the best out of it possible. So by all means, use the chat for introductions, to ask questions, observations. If you have any questions at all or queries about your CPD standards membership, anything to do with your accreditation, your assessment, etc., then please do send a direct message to our wonderful colleague, Kirsty Walker, who's on the call, and she'll be able to help you from there. So this session is being recorded. It's going to be uploaded to YouTube. If you would like to keep your camera on, that's absolutely fine, but please be aware that we are then going to upload it publicly, but obviously microphones off throughout the session. So as we say, this is a session for you. And as much as you can, we'd love you to sort of get involved and focus on just your professional development on this Monday morning. So our time today broadly is going to be a 45-minute session. As I said, ask questions in the chat and we'll take them as we go along. And then we'll round up with a few at the end as well. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Khalil Rener from Ridgeflow Performance. Wonderful speaker, and we're really, really pleased to welcome him here today for this session. So Khalil is a performance coach. He's got a sports science background and working with organisations, as I said, to be the best that they can be. And he's been doing this for the past 7 years. He's got a very, very broad church of clients and a very kind of strong message to bring to us today. So a warm welcome to you. We're looking forward to this session so much. Over to you. I'm sure I don't do you justice to introduce you, and looking forward to our session today.
Great, thanks Amanda, thanks everybody. Hello, welcome. So I'll just get my slides up and we can get started. So today the outline is your roadmap to sustained success, and ultimately I hope that you can all leave with a bit of an action plan around how you can build a personal plan. And if any of you are running a team, also looking at how you can support your colleagues with this, whether they're fellow trainers, whether they're in other roles in your organization as well. So just Amanda introduced me, but as she mentioned, I'm a sports scientist. So I did sports science in my undergraduate and carried on to do sport management in my master's. And really where my interests lay, kind of especially as I expanded my course, because initially I came in just wanting to work with professional sports people, but actually where my real interest lay was taking those ingredients from what makes an elite athlete elite versus just good, what makes an amazing team so good, and bringing those ingredients into the workplace. And so over the last kind of over 10 years now, I've worked in professional sport. I've worked in-house in corporate organizations like Gartner. I've run teams, led teams of over 30 staff during residential summer camps, Easter camps, recruiting and training them. But ultimately, Ridgeflow Performance, now we are a wellbeing consultancy, performance consultancy, and we help leaders and teams to be their best. And interestingly, we were, over the last 6 years, a well-being consultancy. But we rebranded this year because we found that ultimately what our clients were asking us to do was more around performance, around leadership. And that term well-being kind of, yeah, I guess there's such a broad church of interpretations of what well-being means in the workplace. And so ultimately, we'll still speak about that today. But we work with global corporates, we work with the NHS, we work with public sector, we work with startups, we work with individuals. So moving straight in, because we only have 45 minutes. Now, this is a picture of the British team in 2000, the Coxless 4 rowing team. Now, they ended up winning. And so Steve Redgrave there, it was his 4th Olympic gold. And I often ask this question, right? If you asked them, right, what are you in the business of? What do you do? What are you in the business of? What do you think they would say, right? As a professional rower, what are you in the business of? Is anyone happy to share out loud or in the chat? Any thoughts at all? Sport, yeah, Million. I guess they are in a sports business, but ultimately, if you went right, what do we do here? Yeah, I guess we row. We're in the rowing business, but ultimately, I'll give you 20 more seconds just to have a think. Or maybe even a rugby team. I don't know if any of you have watched those Netflix documentaries where they look at the rugby teams or the cycling teams, and ultimately, yeah, this is why I wake up every day. This is why we're here. This is why we're bothering. Right? So it's pretty obvious when I say it, but ultimately they're in the business of winning. Yes, Marcia, yes, just got it. I just got it before. Achieving the best results for our efforts, win where possible. Gerard, yeah, absolutely. Right, we're in the business of winning. That's all we do. And so whether you're the rower, whether you're the cleaner, the physio, the coach, the trainer, the oar manufacturer, right? Everything they do is ultimately to help that boat go faster, to help these people win. Whether they win or not, right? But it's that clear focus. And, whether if you want a different sports analogy, non-sports analogy, I was working with a very high-end supermarket chain in London. They got 13 locations. We're working with their area managers. And they go, right, what are you in the business of? It's a good point. I don't know. We're a supermarket, I guess. We're a grocer. No, actually, to be honest, we're in the business of wanting to be the best grocer in the world, right? Same thing, 11 Madison Park, #1 restaurant in the world. I don't know if any of you have read the book Unreasonable Hospitality. Really worth reading by Will Guidara. But their journey to become a 4-star New York Times restaurant, right, was incredible. But that message, that clarity, when you're coming to a session like this around what does success look like, how do you sustain high levels of performance, right? We need to really be clear. What am I in the business of, right? What do I actually do, right? If I have a team, if I've got an admin team, if I've got a marketing team, are we just another training company? Are we just another consultancy? Or are we in the business of X, Y, Z? What does that mean? What does that look like to you? Working with a summer camp company, I was there last week, right? And their thing was ultimately we want to give our students the best experience possible when they come from abroad. Right? We just want to have the best student experience. And that's what they were in the business of. Everything else is the trimming. And so what does high performance mean or look like to you? And are you able to define that? Now, some of you on this call will find that really easy. And you'll go, yeah, of course, Khalil, I know my mission. I know why I'm here and why I'm on the call. I just want to fine tune this. Some of you will be scratching your heads. Like going, ooh, actually, if I had to answer that in 10 seconds, I don't know if I could. I don't truly know if I have as much intention as I maybe should do. Right? And just like any goal, whether you think well-being, whether you think doing well in your business, whether it's being a good parent, a good partner, right? If you don't clearly know what that end goal is, it's hard to then be deliberate. It's hard to be efficient, effective. and then how to communicate that and ensure that your team works, right? And so with the supermarket chain, right, we're saying, okay, you're the area managers. So you manage 13 managers who then manage shop floor staff. I was saying, you're aware that you're all trying to be the number one supermarket, right, in the world, number one grocer in the world. Do your managers know? Some of them really buy into that. Okay, great. Now, what about the shop floor staff? Are they aware of what good looks like? Are they aware of why they want to be the best grocer in the world? And that's why then when I ask you to put our garlic bulbs into a pyramid, it's not, oh, why do I have to put this in a pyramid? We could just shove them in the basket. And you go, no, we're doing this because it's going to help us be the best grocer in the world. And then it helps us justify sell £5 bulbs of garlic instead of 30p bulbs of garlic at Tesco, right? And so it's really, really important to one, be very clear on that, and then really be clear on how you communicate that externally. One, internally to your team, but then to your clients, right? And then if you are an individual, if you're a freelancer, what does success look like for you? We've kind of touched on that. But if you have a team, or if you're in-house, right? If you're internal and you're a trainer, I don't know, in-house somewhere, what does team success look like, right? So one, what is my job? What does team success look like? And ultimately then what does organizational success look like, or across borders? So I have a short video I want to show you, which really highlights this point. It's a 30-second video. So I'll just get it up now. I'll just make sure I'm sharing my sound. Here we go. Okay. Hang on, so, okay. So there's a sports analogy, right? This guy just scored a goal. Everybody that wasn't on the pitch just lost their mind, right? They were celebrating. Organizational win, team win. It's not me that scored the goal. My colleague scored the goal. Maybe the person who I actually am competing for that position for. But yeah, still absolutely am behind that organizational goal. And we're all working towards that. And that's very difficult to achieve if you're not aware of, right, we want to win the championship, or we want to be providing the best service to our clients in this niche area of training, or we just want to be so 100% effective and efficient with our training that every year we just get repeat business. There's no question about it, right? Whatever that means to you. So we've spoken a bit about this, but ultimately then that comes down to what does our culture, what are our culture be known for? What are the core behaviors then we want to see in our team, but also in ourselves, right? If I think, that person who would be successful, that winning rowing team, what kind of behaviors would that rowing team have? How am I actually doing those? Is our team actually truly doing those? Can I audit myself a bit? Right? When we were speaking to students, we said, how are these core behaviors going to show up in front of students, in front of group leaders, in front of our clients, right? So you can change that. Instead of students, you go clients, or is it prospective partners? Is it just internally when I'm walking around the halls of my company? And so with that, there's a really important part, because this training is kind of split, right? One for yourself and two for your team. And we do a lot around building retention, high retention teams, attracting talent. How do you keep them, right? And if people know what's expected of them, they feel cared for and they have opportunities to grow, they're 3 times more likely to stay and 17% more productive, right? According to Gallup, especially if you look at their Q12 questionnaire, which I'll show you in a second, right? But are you clear of what's expected of you, right? Hey, this is what I need to do to be successful. Okay, am I clear about what's expected? Am I caring for myself? Am I caring for my team? Am I enabling them to grow? Even if we're a 2-person team, how are we helping? Maybe they can't be the founder because, that I'm the founder. But how can they grow in that space, right? How is that being really clear? So I'd advise you to look through Gallup's Q12 questions if you're looking at that. I won't go through them now, but there's some really great questions that hopefully you can just tick all of these off. But sometimes when I go through this with clients, they have a few questions that stick. You go, oh, does my whole team know what's expected of me at work? Right? As an example, I'll just go back to this slide so you don't get distracted by all those questions. I was working with a student union, and they have a new CEO. They were the #1 student union in the country for years and years. And then, of course, funding's been cut everywhere for universities. And they went, it's really tough because we're expected to do more with less. My department of 5 is now me. What do I do? So that's difficult, right? I wake up in the morning, I come to the office, it's a bit confusing. So what does success look like now in this changing environment? And so if you're going through organizational change, that's really important to examine. So as a leader, as a peer, if you're running teams, but even just for yourself, if you're running your business, right? Are you rocking up to work ready? Are you looking after your well-being? Right? Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm stressed. Right? Oh, I'm feeling, just a little bit lethargic or angry or not so clear. I don't really have a plan. I'm kind of not so intentional, as I mentioned. So fine. But what do you need to do then to rock up ready? Right? How can you manage that stress? How can you become, less tired? How can you recover like a champion, as well as work like a champion? How are you kind of being open with your team around what you need to ensure that that's happening? Right? And then how are you supporting others to do that? Are you observing them? Are you asking team members about what they need? Is there a kind of psychological safe environment in your team, but even internally in yourself, right? If you're not a leader or have colleagues, right? And if you're working by yourself, does this happen internally? Right? Are you open about what you need? Are you giving yourself permission to do these things? And a large part of I'm going through this very quickly, I'm aware, but we only have 45 minutes. So if you need more support after, I'll give a call link that you can sign up to with me for 30 minutes. We can chat through anything else if you need. I'm happy to help. After reading that Unreasonable Hospitality book, I've become a bit more generous with my time. But one thing that people often come to, if we do a lot of internal audits for organizations, so where your stress level is coming from, where inefficiency is coming from, how can we help you perform? Everything we do is often backed by data. One, so that we can measure any improvements and be again more intentional, but also just instead of putting your finger in the air and going, oh, I hope that this is going to stick, we can really understand that. And a lot of time now, managers, organizations are coming in, oh, staff are complaining about workload, right? They're saying they're overwhelmed. They're struggling to work, right? They're really busy. They're saying they're busy. How do we know whether there's too much work? How do we know if they're just not productive enough? How do we know if we just need to get somebody new in or train them up? Right? How do we know? We don't want to just come in and go, Khalil, you're lazy, sort it out, mate, if he's truly being very effective. And how can we measure that? And so we have quite a few different questions we can look at, but this is coming out, especially with Gen Z, right? People are starting to task mask, to appear busy, right? Oh, because it's good to look busy, right? Because they're fearing for their jobs or struggling to find quality work elsewhere. There's unclear expectations, burnout, right? And there's this kind of never-ending feeling of feeling completely drained. So even in the news, these came out, when did this come out? 22nd of June, so last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago now. And this came out on the 20th of June, right? So there's so much in the news, even currently, right? 270 pings a day. So how do we look at this? Again, we come back to that role clarity piece, right? Are you clear on what your job role is? If you're clear, if I'm asking you this question, hey, what's your role? And are you clear on your tasks? And you're going, I know exactly what my tasks are. Consider yourself lucky, or that you're doing something correct, because a lot of organizations and a lot of people really struggle to answer this question. Right? Are you truly clear on what your job role is, on what your task clarity is? And then are you sure on the prioritization, right? What are the more pertinent tasks? I'm sure you speak to all of your clients and you go, how are you doing? Oh, I'm busy. Oh, I'm spinning 15 plates at a time. Okay, fine. Okay, that's a reality. How do you know which plate to focus on first, right? Are you aware of that? Because if you don't, then, I've got 15 plates. That's hard to deal with all at the same time. And am I actually truly spending time on those high priority tasks versus low priority tasks? Oh, I love making my marketing posters for my training session that I'm running next month. Fine. Could that be a 2 hour job or an hour job instead of spending 2 days on it? Right? It's changing the color by a different percentage and moving the logo from left to right, really going to move the needle more than maybe spending time on sales or training or development or reading. Right? Do people feel like they have enough time to do those high priority tasks? Because if people don't, right, and you're rushing, again, that's where these issues come out and these arbitrary deadlines. I mean, I'm sure all of us on this call have had these deadlines thrown out to us. I need this by Monday, Khalil. Okay, great. I'm going to work through the weekend because it's a really tight deadline. Let's get it to you on Monday. And you don't get a reply until 2 weeks later. You go, oh, seriously, did it have to be Monday? Do we have to be setting ourselves these difficult pieces? Also, how are you setting yourself up for work? Right? Are you going to a co-working space? Are you working at home by the kitchen? So you're making yourself lunch, you're watching TV in the background, your kids are playing in the back, whatever it is. Can you set yourself up to be as effective as possible? And if you're in the workplace or you have colleagues, are there just too many meetings in the day? Could it be a WhatsApp? And interestingly, talking about distractions and effectiveness, we were focusing on supporting Gen Z with a few businesses specifically. And for engagement, there was a 30% increase in engagement if you use Gen Z's preferred method of communicating. So for me, I love video calls, but only 2% of Gen Z said that that's their preferred method of communication. It's either through email or through Slack, WhatsApp, or those internal comms messages, which I personally find infuriating. I just want to chat to someone, right? So again, important to match what works. If you're a leader, do you have your yes person? Oh, Alina, she's great. I'm always gonna ask her if she can do the piece of work because I know she'll always say yes. But then Tom or whoever it is on the other side, same role, same pay, they're a bit grumpy. They push back if I ask them to do anything, so I never ask them to do anything. Alina's going to get very tired. Tom's going to be fine, right? So really important to look at these. So evaluate yourself. What are your top 5 to 10 priorities? Maybe do this as an exercise afterwards, especially if I said, right, I'm going to pick you now on the call and I'm going to ask you to answer this out loud and you have 5 seconds to answer. Do you think you'd be able to answer very easily? And it's important to look at this, and are you spending time on those or not? And I really should be getting more clients, but I don't do any business development because I hate it. And what if people say no? Well, then you're not going to get more clients, right? So you need to be focusing on this, and you need to be really disciplined with that. And it's look, I know it's easier said than done, right? They say you're good at teaching what you need, right? And what I often say is, in that list, did you add well-being or kind of gap bridging activities? And gap bridging is where I say, where are you versus how you want to be feeling? What's that gap, right? Is one of your priorities, okay, I need to sleep well. I need to make sure that I go on that run at lunchtime, or otherwise my afternoon is just unproductive, right? So prioritize that. What's the business case for well-being and looking after yourself and rocking up ready? If you come to a training session and you're half asleep, or you're speaking to a client and you're not quite clicking and engaged, what's that going to do? So really important to look at that. And just back on these priorities, I think there's multiple levels, right? When I was speaking to this one of my clients, they were speaking about the fact that they're so reactive. They're Khalil, it's hard to think 5 days in advance, let alone 5 weeks, let alone a year, right? So how can you look at what your short-term priorities are? How can you be a bit more proactive? What are your middle-term, long-term? And then what we call the BHAG. If any of you have read Jim Collins' Good to Great, or you've heard of it in other areas, the BHAG, which is your big, hairy, audacious goal. That 10, 15, 30-year goal. Right? In 30 years, I want to have hit 100,000 people or 1 million people, whatever it is, right? I want to have made £1 million. I want to have moved the needle on, fire safety, if that's what you're training on, whatever it is. So how can we integrate this in work, right? Are you asking colleagues how they are? Are you seeing where they need help? Are you helping them to reach their sustained success, right? Is there this culture of performance in your team? And again, if you aren't, working in a team? Are you asking yourself these questions? You know, when are you sending emails? When are you working? Is there this constant thing of always being on? Oh, I have to look after the kids, so the only time I can work is from 9 till 11 p.m. Fine. Send those emails, but schedule them. Schedule them so they enter your colleague's inbox at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. so that they don't feel forced to always be on, right? Like we said, evaluate where you're setting deadlines, making sure that you're praising colleagues, right? Hey, well done. That was great. Do it publicly. Do it on LinkedIn. Makes a world of difference. I have a friend who works at a very big accounting firm that you would know. And he was thinking of leaving, right? And he's been working hours and hours and hours above what he should be, right? And he's probably making the company thousands and thousands and thousands for doing so. And they gave him a £100 voucher to say thank you. I was like, surely that's insulting. He's told everybody, you couldn't stop talking about it for 2 weeks about how appreciated he felt. And he was thinking of leaving. And I think that genuinely changed whether he would stay or not. And I was like, wow, £100 voucher. And I don't think it was a monetary thing. I think it was the fact that they went out of their way. They got financial approval because there were so many levels to get the £100 approval for a voucher. But that's just to prove, right? What a true, genuine piece of praise going, buddy, you're doing so well. Thank you so much. We see what you're doing. We really appreciate it. Like, here's a token. But ultimately, we just want to say thank you. You know, it can be a world of difference for that sustained success, right? So he's going to keep going now. He's not going to kind of burn out and drop off. I'm going to just jump through this to here, right? Ideally, right, if we can have most of our work, if you evaluate all of your tasks and you go, okay, my 5 to 10 priorities are X, Y, Z, are most of them in the top right corner? Am I good and do I love it? Hopefully, yes. It's not always the reality. You can't always do that. But are you able to then delegate some of those tasks out, right, to have more energy? Right? I delegate all of our accounting because I hate it. I'm probably good at it, but I hate it, right? I can do it. Same thing with some of our writing, right? If I have to write articles or reports, I get an editor to look through it because yes, I could spend a day writing an article. But again, do I want to spend a day and all of my energy writing an article when somebody could do it in 2 to 3 hours, do it really well, and I can spend more time on activities that help me get to where I want to be, that move my boat faster, right? And so for you, I want you to look at this. Where are things, or how can you do more in the good that you're good at and that you love, right? And if most of them are down here, maybe evaluate what you're doing and how you can completely change your job or kind of way of working, right? It doesn't have to be, okay, I'm going to quit, I'm not going to be a trainer anymore, but it's going, okay, do I need to change how I do my training? Do I need to change how I attract clients? Do I need to change my work schedule? Can I get a bigger team so that I can have more help? Fine, I need to do more business development to pay for that, but how could that work? Right. And ultimately looking at comparative advantage. So if you look in your team or in a partnership, right, if there are other trainers that you could work with, if you've heard of this term, comparative advantage, it's easier to speak about it in kind of countries. If you imagine a country was really fertile, right? Lots of farming land, and then another country has loads of coal, and then another country is a desert but has great, I don't know, business incentives, right? If they all focus on their comparative advantage, their comparative strength, ultimately the theory goes that everybody benefits, right? So what is your comparative advantage? What can you focus on? Hey, I'm really good at this. With kids, you know, you watch these superhero movies, right? A superhero is like, great, I'm super strong, and so I'm going to go be super strong. That person can fly. They're going to go to do the thing that they can fly. What is your superpower? What is your comparative advantage? How can you focus on that? And ultimately, that'll help you be more sustained, right? Sustainable. Don't try and be, I don't know, Tony Robbins if you're not Tony Robbins, right? Be yourself. And so with that, I'm going to take us to some reflective tasks, and I'm going to get us to, actually, you know what, I'm gonna, here, nope, wrong one. I'm going to take us to Mentimeter. If any of you haven't used Mentimeter, I really like it as a tool. ultimately, right, hopefully you can all see my screen here. And if not, I've popped the link in the chat. But if everybody can go to the link in the chat, or go to menti.com and use this code, you can then answer these questions completely anonymously. And when I'm working with organizations, it's especially when they're, oh, Khalil, good luck getting anybody to interact with you. We're a really quiet bunch. I go, so let's use Mentimeter because everybody can write anonymously and you can see their answers on the board. So please click that link in the chat. Your answers are going to be completely anonymous, but I'd love you to check in with yourself right now, just in general, right? And go, okay, how am I feeling? How am I doing? How's my well-being? How's my performance? How am I feeling? Sense check. Is that working for everybody? Isn't it? Yeah. Great. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm good. I'm fine. Tired. Okay. Some of you feeling amazing with effort. Again, it's important to be honest with yourself here. It's completely anonymous, so don't feel like you have to say good if you're not feeling good, which it seems like you're not. Right, and there's no right or wrong here, but what I want you to think about is, firstly, is this the first time I've asked myself this question today? Is it the first time I've asked myself this question in June, ever? And if it is, right, that's an issue. Because how are you supposed to be your best self if you don't know where you are? Right? If I say, oh, if I ask you to come in and go, hey, everybody, I'd love you to come and train my finance team to be better at finance. You go, well, where are you at finance? I don't know what better looks like if I don't know where you're at, right? It's hard to be intentional. Same thing again with you. You don't know where you are or how you're feeling. What does improving performance or sustaining performance mean, and how do you know which tools and tips and where to put that effort? For some people, this is a really difficult question to ask yourselves, right? It can be really uncomfortable to look inward. Oh, I don't want to look inward. I've been spending years pushing all of that down, right? But with all this push around mindfulness, being more self-aware, it's such a superpower. And if you read anything around emotional intelligence, around performance, there's always kind of a chapter in here around this, right? And I'm sorry for anybody that's not feeling well. That is frustrating. And if this is triggering at all, of course, please, step away. If you start looking inward, take a break. Do it around somebody that you trust, or maybe even do it alongside a professional. But a lot of you seem like you're doing okay. Some of you are tired, some are overwhelmed. But this next question is actually often, ironically, a bit harder to answer, right? So we've been speaking about what does sustained performance look like? What does good look like? But how you feel? What's that ideal self? What does your best self feel like? How would you like to be feeling ultimately? If you're feeling overwhelmed, how would you actually like to be feeling, right? If you're feeling tired, how would you like to be feeling? And you could answer the same as what you answered there. You might already be feeling how you want to be feeling, right? But it's that gap. And if this question is hard to answer, again, make this your homework. This is what you have to do for the rest of the day: is figure out, how do I want to be feeling? Some people it takes them years, right? And this changes often. I'm about to get married, right? This answer is changing quite a bit for me as I get closer to that date. In a good way, I'm very excited, but it's more, thinking about family and what does good look like for me, and how do I want to set up my life, etc. I'm very excited. I realize that could have been interpreted as me going, oh no, I'm getting married. I'm very, very excited. Some of you saying, I want to feel organized, on top of my game, energized, ready, excited, energized, positive, organized. So only 3 of you have answered, which is quite a lot less than the last question. Now, I'm not sure whether that's because it's a difficult question or it's taking more time to answer, but I think it's telling, right? That often we get fewer answers for this question than we do the one earlier. I'm just going to give you another 10 seconds or 20 seconds just to answer this if you can. But again, don't worry if this is hard to answer, right? A lot of people struggle, but my invitation to you is to spend time to find that answer. Okay, move on. So if you felt your best, if you were really truly spending time to bridge that gap from feeling overwhelmed to feeling more in control, from feeling tired to feeling energized, from feeling a little bit like you're languishing to feeling motivated, how would that impact your work? How would that help you sustain your performance? Now, with time, I'll just jump off the Mentimeter here. I'll just go back to the slides just to keep the momentum going, especially as it's getting a bit slower. But I really want you to think about this. What is the business case for well-being ultimately and for looking after yourself? And this is a large reason why we rebranded, right? Because people were realizing, well, well-being had a bit of a business case during COVID, and then it became a very soft offering. We're going, oh, I've got better things to do. I've got to make my business work. We've got finances to hit. We've got targets to hit. We've got team to look after, right? Well-being is a nice to have. But if you look at any of these top CEOs, top elite athletes, top military individuals, right? If you look at their schedules, if you hear what they do in their day, what is the first thing they do? What is one of the first things they do? Oh, okay, think about checking with myself, right? Figure out what I need to do, connect with something, set myself up to be my best because it's essential. It's essential. And try and be aware of what causes gaps, right? Especially in these busy periods, right? What stops me from focusing on this? Yes, Khalil, all that is good. You know, I know I need to go to the gym. I know I should sleep more. I know I should maybe manage my stress, but you know, I'm so busy. I don't have the time for that. Okay, fine. If time's an issue, how can you schedule that into your day? How can you ensure that it's one of your priorities? Or what are, you know, oh, doing sales is really stressful. And so that causes me to spiral into you know, paralysis. I don't move the needle forward. Okay, great. Good to be aware of that. How can we be aware of what some of our hurdles are so that, again, you can either go get help or you can focus on going over it. We often say, let's look at the controllables. So let's dive into some theory here quickly, just in the last 5 minutes. Self-determination theory. Some of you may have heard of this. It's a sports science term, but it's used in other sectors. And ultimately, it's taking responsibility for your actions, thoughts, and the way you deal with things, right? And so people who are high in self-determination are happier, more successful, and more likely to succeed ultimately and be less depressed. Ultimately, if you look at life and your resources, so what are the hands that you're dealt today? Okay, a client was really rude to me, but what are the resources that I have? Okay, I can manage my emotions. I can try and be solutions focused, and I can acknowledge them. I can say how I feel. You know, I've got many other nice clients. So how can I kind of take the cards that have been dealt versus my outcomes or my resources to then lead to those outcomes? Right? Oh, the weather's bad. Oh, the recession. Oh, the macroeconomic climate. You know, I was saying to Kirsty earlier, I was like, wow, yeah, the climate for us, right, post-COVID, is so different. We've got to adapt. I could grumble and complain, or I can go, right, let's try and find a solution. How do we change how we're working? Right? We often think of things in these 3 Ps. If any of you have listened to the High Performance podcast, they speak about this a bit. But pervasive. So they, them, all of them always do this to me. Right? All of the clients are always rude to me. That specific client right now is a bit rude or frustrating. Maybe they've got stuff going on in their life. Right? So think back to some specific issues or moments that have dipped you. You know, oh, I feel really uncomfortable right now. Oh, that was horrible. Or, oh, wow, I had road rage because that car cut me off. And now I'm frustrated for the rest of the day. You know, how can you manage that? And if we think about, you know, what could help us sustainably feel at our best, what could help us gain more self-determination, right? It's balancing our red brain versus our blue brain, as the New Zealand rugby team say, or your emotional versus your rational brain, or your monkey mind versus your human mind, right? Boosting your resilience. How are you preparing for these situations? Firstly, you need to be aware of what's going on in your calendar and what impacts you. And if you can look at your calendar and go, okay, I know that some things I can schedule for. Okay, I've got that training session, or I've got a pilot. And if I get this pilot, then I get a year's amount of work. Fantastic. So my wife, oh yeah, sorry, I had a message from my family. They just tried to call 2 times, but it's not an issue. Sorry about that. Yeah, are you able to prepare for things, and are you be aware to see what's coming up? Oh, I've got a big pilot. How do I make sure I'm ready? Right? If you think of an elite athlete or a composer, right, and they say, okay, we've got an orchestra that we're going to present or perform in a month, you're going to prepare for that. But also, there are things that come up that you can't prepare for, so you need to have that base foundation. How are you adapting to it in the situation? But also, we don't spend enough time recovering. There's this rugby coach called Sir Clive Woodward, and at half time, he'd get his players to change the shirt, whether they were winning or losing. New half, doesn't matter, we're resetting. How often do you get an email in the morning and it bothers you for the rest of the day? Right? Yeah, Alina, you mentioned recovery is key for you. Yeah, and I've one thing that's helped me to hear it and almost give myself permission is recovering like a champion. It's like train like a champ, recover like a champ. Not just in physical activity, but just in work, right? In business. I can tend to just go, oh no, I'm gonna push through it. It's like, no, recover. Recover like a champion, recover with purpose, recover with performance. And some of the things you can do, right, of course, during difficult situations, breathing activities, right? Visualizing positively. Oh, that pilot's going to go really well. Imagine if I leave that pilot and everyone goes, wow, thank you, Alina. That was a lovely presentation. We're absolutely going to be back in touch tomorrow to plan logistics, right? How are you talking to yourself? Oh, you're rubbish, Khalil. You're never going to make that sale. You're never going to do a good training session versus, hey, you did a good training session last week. This week could be good. Or, hey, if you keep training this way, it's going to go well, right? So again, this is around sustaining that, right? Those mantras, those grounding, how can you reset? Say, right, reset, let it go, or focus on performance, stay motivated. So there's in the moment things, right? Or for those of you that are catastrophizing, just aware of time, I'm going to give you one last piece here. Is looking at what your demands are. So, oh my gosh, sometimes I can catastrophize. So what are actually the demands? Okay, I need to get 5 more training sessions booked in this quarter. What's my ability? Okay, I'm good at reaching out to clients and old clients and being quite persistent and going to networking events. And what are the consequences? Okay, if I don't get 5, I'm not going to die. We're doing okay. And is this really going to matter in 3 years' time? Is this going to matter in 3 years' time? Am I going to remember this stress? Some hardcore people say if it's not going to matter in 5 years' time, I'm not going to give it more than 5 minutes thought. Yeah, I can't. I'm not quite there yet. But you can imagine, right? Actually, really, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Okay, I don't hit target this month, this quarter. That's okay. It's not okay, but I'll keep pushing, and I might get closer. Right? What are those demands? What are those actions? And then prevention, right? Make sure you're doing things that you're enjoying, right? Make sure that you're taking days off. That's key for sustained success. It's not great, I can be good for a year. How can you be good for a career? And are you exercising? Are you sleeping? And are you fueling well? Now I'm going to jump to this and what the last bit of homework that I want to give you before we go into questions is to think about, right? What are my barriers? What's stopping me from putting this stuff in place? Right? Yes, all of this sounds good, Khalil, but in the moment, actually, when I most need this, I struggle, right? Or I'm just really struggling to start, or I don't know where to start, or it's all a bit overwhelming and I'm just a bit paralyzed, or I don't have gym kit, or I don't have time, or I can't be booked. Whatever the barrier is, what's stopping you? But what could help you? Or having a coach could help, or having a bit of accountability, or starting small. or putting my gym shoes by the front door and making sure that I have to, you know, at least everything's set up. Okay, setting a bedtime routine for myself and being disciplined with that. Blocking out my lunchtime so I do take that break. And, you know, I would never not rock up to a client meeting. So how can I treat my lunch break as my client meeting that I would? What are one or two or three things that I want to put in place? Is it just maybe prioritizing? Is it looking at my time management? Is it being more intentional with my goal and making sure that then everything that I'm doing is moving that needle forward, making the boat go faster, helping me be the best supermarket chain in the world? Right? So what are those actions and ultimately what's the benefit? So that, you know, you go, oh, a run, what's a run going to do? I've got to go do some more sales, or I've got to run more training sessions. You know, going for that run is going to make my training session better. It's going to make my sales call maybe a little bit more effective. I want to be more present. I want to be clearer. Really important. That last bit. What are the benefits? That's the most important piece. And then think about how you do that with your team as well, and how you can facilitate your team to do this. Now, if you have any questions at all, we've got 15 minutes, I think now, just for the hour, but if you need to go, you can, but please do let me know if you have any questions. And actually, just before you go, if any of you want to have kind of 30 minutes with me to go through some questions, here's my link. You can book in 30 minutes with me. I'd be happy to do that as well. And if you're happy to share on LinkedIn about the session, I'd really appreciate that. And of course, tag in the CPDSO and tag us in. But yeah, thank you, Amanda. And
that's all right.
And
it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much. I think that session was, you know, so informative, and I think I don't know if I speak on behalf of everybody else, but it really sparked like curiosity in my mind as to different ways to think about winning or performance or anything like that. So has anybody got any more questions or observations at this point?
I think Alina, you had your hand up, right? Yeah, Alina.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a really nice presentation. I joined with a little bit of delay. I have a question for our colleagues here. I don't know who would like to share some good practices, because I run a small business for a few years now, and my clients call me on Christmas time, on vacation. So this for me, it's been okay for a couple of years, but now it's, I mean, my client base is kind of grew a little bit, so it's not that easy. My vacation comes and I don't know how, I don't know how not to answer phone calls on the beach because they find me everywhere. So maybe some good practice that you could share, or maybe our colleagues, on what has worked for you. I would appreciate that.
I mean, I've got an answer, but I'll let the colleagues, Alina, since you sent it out, let's see if anybody in the call is happy to answer first. Okay, well, I mean, what I've found, so there's two that I think it's really important for you and for everybody in the call to firstly understand, what does work-life balance mean to you versus work-life blend, right? So I can just look at two extremes, me and my partner, right? Me and my fiance. For her, it's on or off. Right? I'm either at work or I'm not. There's very much, it's compartmentalized. Whereas for me, it's that work-life blend. Right? I almost get, so literally answering emails on the beach, I get more stress knowing that my phone is in the hotel room, right, than it not. And I'm like, oh, if I can just bash this email out, it's done. Great. I know that the however, as I mentioned, what does winning look like is changing for me as I'm getting married and needing a bit more time off because I can't just work all the time. Is letting my clients know, right? Is to go, hey, everybody, I'm going on holiday in 2 weeks' time. Or I'm going, like, I've got my honeymoon, right, in September. And so I've been telling people for months, right? Look, I've been told my laptop is not allowed to be opened on my honeymoon. And can we please make sure that that time's protected? And if you really need anything, here's my colleague, right? So it's delegating that out. Or even if it's a friend or somebody to go look. And if worse comes to worse, and it's an emergency, which it rarely is, I find, in training.
Yeah.
give me a call. But I think it's just that managing of expectations. And I think that's where then for me, the anxiety's left is, okay, they know I'm off. They've thumbs up that they know I'm off. I've got some contingency plans in case they really need to get in touch. But they they go on holiday, so why can't I? Especially if I've given enough notice. And I think that's been really helpful for me. But I think ultimately it's defining what that means and what that looks like. And if you have a team member, right? Because I think you mentioned, you've got a little team, like especially all the Gen Z research that's come out. If you read the Deloitte document that's just come out, a report last month, like a 50-page document, but it's well worth reading. They were talking about how most people now are picking for work-life balance jobs, picking jobs for work-life balance than for money, right? Obviously money is nice, but work-life balance is one of the top pillars. And again, that means something different to everybody. So how can you help people define what that looks like? So what does winning look like in work-life balance to you, and how can you explain that? And actually, I'm pretty confident that we'd have maybe 14, 15 different answers on the call.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yes, a lot. That makes sense. And actually, I was looking to what our colleagues said, and they also have some good ideas in the same line, basically. That's a good idea to kind of set expectations and announce them ahead of time. I didn't do that. That's true. I will do it and see how this works. Thanks.
Yeah, great. And yeah, Jenny's mentioned that, in the chat, get clients to plan what they do in emergency without you. Have courageous conversations with yourself. Manj has said, Ari, what are your boundaries? Absolutely. If you ever listen, if you want a good podcast, the How I Built This with the CEO of Patagonia, he's got a really good work-life balance. He's got two sayings. Right? One is, if the surf's good, go surfing. Right? So he tells all of his colleagues, if the surf's good, go surfing. I know you're going to be looking at the surf outside, so just go and just make sure you get your work done. But also he was saying, look, if I'm on holiday, don't call me unless the factory's burnt down. Actually, if the factory's burning down, what the bloody hell am I going to be doing? Right? I'm on holiday. What am I going to do? Call the fire engine? Right? And so he said, there's no real emergency that's going to really need me. So again, obviously there's exceptions, but it's a good podcast to hear. And he's made, $1 billion business with that ethos, right? So it's really awesome. Any other questions at all? I think we've got time for one more.
I've got one question for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Something I often ask, because obviously you're the expert, but if somebody wants to go away from this and think about another resource, wants to find out a little bit more about this area, is there any kind of one book or podcast or something that you would recommend that sort of helped you along the way, or just something that is a good signpost for our trainers and coaches and educators on here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough one for one, but I think for me, the two podcasts, I really like hearing other people's stories and listening to what successful people do. And so it's less theory and more, look, this is what I did and it kind of worked. And so the High Performance podcast and then How I Built This are two very kind of, How I Built This as an NPR podcast. I've been listening to it for years, and it looks at how successful founders basically built their business and where they went. And there hasn't been a single story that's been, I decided to start, I don't know, Moleskin. And so I made Moleskin and then I made $1 billion and it was easy. Everyone's had challenges and stories, and, it's great to hear then, ultimately what they do in those moments. The High Performance podcast, however, is a little bit more rounded with who comes on. So you've got sports people, you've got newscasters, you've got coaches, and they're slowly branching out to more business people. So then there's a lot of books that I love. I mentioned that one, that Unreasonable Hospitality book that I've been reading recently. There's what did I read that was so good that I've told a few people about it, and it's literally. I'll send a message, Amanda. After there's a one
That's
book.
fine. When you circulate the slides and the recording, perhaps if you could just jot a few down. And I know, you know, everybody on here is a lifelong learner. As I say, every day is a CPD day. Yeah, if we've got some pointers, we can pop those in the follow-ups as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, I remember it. It's Legacy. It was about this guy spent a year with the New Zealand All Blacks as a journalist. And at the time, it was at the time when they were at their winningest. And so he basically took their essential high performance lessons or tools and put them into 12 lessons or 12 kind of pointers. You know, one of them, that famous one, sweep the sheds. Don't know if you've seen that. That was going around on the news.
Okay.
But anyway, I know we're running out of time, but yeah, the Legacy by I can't remember who it was. I've got it on my bookshelf, but I wrote loads of notes in that. So that's a good one. That's a good one.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah,
All
of course,
right.
if anybody wants to get in touch here, I'll pop my 30-minute scheduler in the chat, or you can see us at ridgeflowperformance.com and my scheduler links there. Obviously, if you need any more help, I'm here. But thank you so much, Kirsty and Amanda, for having me, and for everybody for joining. I hope it was helpful.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, thank you for spending time with us this morning. As I said, it's been a really insightful and sort of curiosity-provoking session, certainly for me, and thank you for the recommendations as well. So it's been a great pleasure to welcome you. And to everybody else, happy Monday. Hope you all have a fabulous week. For those of you that are in the UK, keep cool as much as you can. We've got this huge, for those of you that aren't in the UK, we've got a big heat wave this week. And as a country without air conditioning, sometimes that's mildly challenging for all of us. So have a wonderful week, and we will look forward to welcoming you back next month with the next CPD Standards webinar. So thanks ever so much and take care. Bye-bye.